Alright, ponies, it is great to be back for another one. Okay, so, it seems you guys really enjoyed chapter 1, so we're gonna keep going. So, this one is pretty long, so I'm not gonna give you like a huge intro, I'm gonna save it all for the end. I'm not gonna give you like a ton of stuff, we're just gonna try to get through this as quick as possible, just because it's a longer chapter and it's gonna take me longer to read through it, so. Princess Celestia had lived for a long time, so long that most ponies could barely comprehend it. Yet, over the past several years, it felt as though more had happened than the entire previous millennium. Great, this is a good start. Okay. Her pupil, Twilight Sparkle, had at once proven herself to be the most talented and capable pony she had ever known, while also having an inner compassion that left a lasting impression on every other pony she would come to know. There was a good reason that she had been chosen to be the Princess of Friendship. At least, that was what she had continued to tell herself. Yet even still, there was a lingering doubt in the back of her mind. Celestia had quickly learned to ignore it, but that doubt came back in full force when she received a letter from Twilight one fateful day. At first glance, it appeared no different from all of the other letters that had been sent to her, appearing in a puff of smoke during a pleasant afternoon brunch with her sister on the castle balcony. She took a sip of her tea as she levitated the envelope in front of her, carefully opening it and reading the message contained within. Dear Princess Celestia, as much as I'd like this letter to be another friendly correspondence, I'm afraid the situation has become much more dire. Today I had what is probably the first near-death experience of my life. It started when I began researching a way to travel between planes of existence without the need for the magic mirror, so that Sunset Shimmer and I could visit each other's world without allowing magic to leak from one world to the other. I created an artifact that I called the Planar Amulet, which would allow for its bearer to travel between planes at will. Unfortunately, while the amulet itself was constructed to withstand the chaotic energies of the interplanal space, I'm doing it again. Interplanar space. I'm sorry. I had neglected to ensure the chain that attached it to my body could survive as well. When I tested its effects, I traveled to the space between worlds, and the interplanar energies destroyed the planar amulet's chain. The artifact was lost, and without it protecting me, I was exposed to the raw energies of interplanar space. Everything that I'd researched in Star Swirl's notes says that being exposed in such a manner would have killed me instantaneously, and this was consistently verified by my attempts at sending Spike's tissue samples, don't ask, through interplanar space. Yet I managed to not only survive, but I was able to make it back to Equestria through means that I don't fully understand. Because of this, I would like to request access to Star Swirl's old laboratory this afternoon. There may be some of his research I haven't seen that could help explain what happened to me. Your faithful friend, Twilight Sparkle. P.S. After completing the initial letter, I had a sudden thought and asked Spike not to send it until I went over my notes again. When I did, I realized that something about the planar amulet itself doesn't make complete sense. It was designed to enable interplanar travel, yet its ability to do so comes entirely from focusing my own magic into it. I constructed the first so that it was attuned specifically to my own magical essence so that only I could use it, and the one I planned to create for Sunset would be attuned to her. Yet if I go over the calculations again, it seems as though the amulet's interplanar travel ability only works if I assume the magic that goes into it. If I assume the magic that goes into it has the properties of my own essence. There's something unique about my magic specifically that's related to the planar amulet's capabilities, and I suspect that it's related to the reason I survived. Celestia loudly spit her tea across the table, ruining several of her favorite cakes and pastries, staining the tablecloth and spraying several ounces of hot liquid directly onto Princess Luna's face. Though she remained mostly unfazed, Luna couldn't help but wince at the scalding tea in her eyes. Despite her pained expression, she met Celestia's eyes not with anger, but with worry. "Is everything all right, sister?" Celestia's stomach began to twist itself into a knot. She met Luna's eyes only reluctantly and answered, I don't know, Luna. I believe Twilight Sparkle may be on the verge of discovering the true nature of her magic." Luna's eyes went wide. She opened her mouth, quickly mimicking an "oh" sound. Several seconds of tense silence passed. "You did tell me you knew this day would come," Luna finally spoke, "that she would come closer to learning the true reason for her ascension." Celestia sighed. "I know, but I didn't think it would be so soon." "You should tell her," said Luna. "Even after everything you've done, she deserves to know." Celestia hung her head low. "I know," she said, "and I will." At first, Twilight had wondered how Celestia had managed to send her a response so quickly. Even for a response to news of her nearly dying, she didn't think it was possible for Celestia to have penned, signed, stamped, and sent a full reply in less than 5 minutes. Her former mentor must have been seriously concerned. Or rather, that's what she thought before she read the letter. "Dear Twilight, please meet me at Canterlot Castle as soon as possible. I need to talk to you in private. Princess Celestia." That's it? Said Twilight. I nearly died, and this is all she sends me? Well, it is the middle of the daytime. Maybe she's just busy, Spike suggested. Spike, I've memorized her daily schedules down to the exact second, said Twilight. Right now, she's supposed to be at brunch stuffing her face full of cake. Yeah, totally not creepy at all that you know that, Spike remarked. Spike, this isn't funny. This letter, it's so short it almost sounds passive-aggressive. Already, Twilight's breath had quickened. A more rational part of her mind chided for her for jumping to conclusions, but it was ignored just as it usually was. What if Princess Celestia is mad at me? What if I did something wrong? What if that's why she wants to talk to me in private? What if she has some sort of punishment? Like something so severe I can't even think of what it might be. That's how horrible it is. Hey, said Spike. Deep breaths, Twilight. Deep breaths. He produced a paper bag from somewhere and handed it to Twilight Sparkle. She quickly grabbed it and placed it over her muzzle, breathing heavily into it until her breath stabilized. Twilight removed the bag from her snout and crumpled it up, tossing it into a corner with several other crumpled bags like it. Thanks. I needed that. Hey, it's no problem, said Spike. Besides, Princess Celestia cares about you a great deal. Heck, you're almost like family to her. I'm sure she just wants to see you in person so she knows you're okay. Yeah, you're probably right. It really was silly of me to think otherwise, wasn't it? Twilight gave Spike a warm smile. Anyway, if Celestia wants to see me as soon as possible, I should probably get going. I'll probably be back by the end of the day. Sounds good, said Spike. I'll see you later. As Twilight left vaguely, she could hear the muffled scratching of Spike's claws against his own scales as he muttered profanity and something about tissue samples. Normally, Twilight would have taken the Friendship Express to Canterlot, as she very much enjoyed the opportunity to relax and watch the scenery go by. But with the urgency suggested by Celestia's letter, she had decided to resort to a much faster means of travel. When she was still a unicorn, teleportation was easily one of the most difficult spells she had learned. It took not only intense concentration, but a perfect mental map of the surrounding area, to the point where it was dangerous to try teleporting anywhere that wasn't directly in her line of sight. To top it off, the spell itself was so magic-intensive that it usually took her a full second to cast, rendering it useless in most contexts. As an alicorn, the question of magical power was a non-issue, as she had access to more than she ever really needed in a particular circumstance. Not only that, but she had found a clever way of getting around the limitations of a mental map. She could send out a pulse of magic towards the sun or moon, aimed in such a way that it would reflect off the celestial body and then land in the general area she intended to travel to. The magic pulse would then scan the area and transmit a mental picture of it directly into her mind, allowing her to perfectly teleport to its location. The calculations needed to reflect the pulse in exactly the right trajectory to land where she wanted it to would be unimaginably complex to any other pony, but she had memorized the formula. The sun and moon's positions throughout the day, and the overall geography of Equestria to such a degree that the math was almost trivial to her. By her own estimation, she could use this technique to reliably teleport anywhere within a 500-mile radius of her location. Naturally, teleporting to Canterlot, a mere 60 miles away, was so easy that it was almost reflexive. I don't know how to say that. I'm not doing a good job today. Come here, Lyra. Let's do this together. As the initial pulse completed and the map transmitted to her mind, she disappeared in a flash of light and reappeared at Canterlot's castle's front gates. The royal guards at the entrance shot each other a glance before shrugging and opening the doorway. Twilight had soon made her way to the throne room where Celestia would normally be residing at this time of day. She passed by a long line of irritated-looking ponies that carried all the way to the throne room's door, which had been shut tight by the pair of royal guards stationed at the entrance. As she approached, the guards opened the door and motioned at her to enter, earning her a series of sharp glances from the line behind her. Twilight cringed at the realization that Princess Celestia must have canceled the rest of her audience hours to see her. "Sorry, important royal business," she said weakly as she passed through the door. As she entered the chamber, the door slammed itself shut forcefully behind her, locking itself with a distinct click. True to her stated intentions, Princess Celestia sat alone atop her throne, with not even a single royal guard within the room. The elder princess's horn glowed, and the door was surrounded by a pink aura that Twilight recognized as a powerful soundproofing spell. "Princess Celestia, you said there was something you wanted to talk to me about?" Celestia stood up from her throne and approached Twilight, regarding her with a deep sorrow in her eyes. "There are many things I wish to discuss with you, Twilight. But first, there is something that I must ask you. Do you recall what it was that awakened the elements of harmony the first time I had sent you to Ponyville?" Twilight lifted an eyebrow. "What? Of course I do. Each of the friends that I had made embodied one of the virtues that the elements represented. Without them, there would have been nothing for the elements to draw their power from." "And what of the element of magic in particular?" Celestia asked. "Do you remember what it was that brought it to you?" "With all due respect, Princess, I don't understand why you're asking me this question," Twilight stammered. The elements are integral part of my friend's history. To a significant extent, they represent who we are. If this is some kind of test, then I don't know what I'm being tested on right now. Celestia's face remained absolutely firm. It is not a test, Twilight Sparkle. There is something that I need you to understand, and to do so, you must understand what your element draws its power from. What do you recall of the prophecy foretelling the element of magic's appearance? That a spark would cause the 6 elements of harmony to appear, Twilight answered. I didn't realize it when I first read the prophecy, but that spark turned out to be an epiphany. It was a metaphor for the realization of how much my new friends meant to me. But I still don't understand. What I understand, that is what you have come to believe. Celestia's words remained firm, even as she abruptly cut Twilight off. Unfortunately, it is also untrue. Twilight's jaw went slack. What? Untrue? But Princess, that's ridiculous. The element of magic literally embodies the magic of friendship. It's the keystone that holds together everything the elements of harmony stand for. Is this some kind of joke? Because if it is, it isn't funny. Friendship is what the element of magic represents, and you would not have been able to harness its power if you did not understand what it meant to have friends, Celestia replied. But that alone could not have bound your element to you. The spark spoken of in the line of the prophecy is something else altogether. Like what? Said Twilight. Patience, Twilight, Celestia chided. Everything will be clear soon enough. You said in your letter to me that your planar amulet would allow its bearer to travel between planes of existence, and that it only functioned when it used your magic specifically. That can only mean one thing. It was not the amulet itself that let you travel to the space between worlds. That ability exists entirely within your own power. Twilight's mouth hung agape. Entirely? And that brings me to the spark, Celestia continued. The spark is a metaphysical essence that 1 in every million souls is born with. The vast majority of those who bear the spark will live their entire lives without seeing 1 iota of its true power. But for an exceedingly rare few, the spark will ignite, and its bearer will become one of the few beings capable of traveling between planes of existence unaided. Your ignited spark is the spark spoken of in the prophecy. You, Twilight Sparkle, are a Planeswalker. I'm a Planeswalker? Twilight had suddenly begun to feel dizzy. Her head spun, and she struggled to hold herself steady, even though she was standing completely still. But why? Why am I only learning of this now? Why didn't you tell me this before? Celestia's expression softened as she looked into Twilight's pleading eyes, and she let out a regretful sigh. Because, in a fit of anger, I had declared that all memory of their kind be forever erased from Equestria. The last Planeswalker to enter our world was a tyrant, unrivaled by any foe you have ever encountered. He murdered my mentor and dearest friend in an attempt to steal the elements of harmony, all for a weapon he claimed to be his legacy. In the end, the elements turned their power against him, forever banishing him from this plane. But that is a story for another day. Your mentor? But that would mean... Twilight's eyes suddenly went wide as the realization dawned on her. He murdered Star Swirl? Please, Celestia blurted out. I don't wish to discuss it any further. Twilight looked into Celestia's eyes, noticing the pool of tears that had already begun to form. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to bring it up. I think I understand why you didn't tell me about Planeswalkers. I wouldn't want to be reminded of that either. I still do not believe it was right of me to keep your Planeswalker spark a secret from you, said Celestia. You are nothing like the man who killed my dearest friend. Either way, the prophecy said that a Planeswalker spark was the only thing that could awaken the element of magic and save my sister from the nightmare. I spent 1,000 years searching for the pony who would bear that spark. The day you received your cutie mark, I knew it had to be you. That was when my spark ignited, said Twilight. That is correct, said Celestia. The Academy for Gifted Unicorns was one of hundreds of institutions I had created for the purpose of finding one with the spark. Your unusual aptitude with spells had convinced me that you were the most likely pony to be destined for the element of magic, and thus possess a Planeswalker spark. To test this, I had placed a spell over the Academy to detect if anything had left our plane of reality. Sure enough, at the very moment you received your cutie mark, you had unknowingly dipped yourself into the blind eternities, the space between planes. Not a fraction of a nanosecond later, you had returned your newly awakened power surging out of your control. Celestia regarded Twilight sadly. I'm sorry that I did not tell you the truth sooner. It wasn't right for me to hide my intentions from you this entire time. The corners of Twilight Sparkle's mouth turned upwards. Princess Celestia, you don't need to apologize to me. It doesn't matter if you told me I'm a Planeswalker or not. You helped me learn and grow in ways I never could have imagined. If it weren't for your guidance, I never would have become the princess I was today. To Twilight's surprise, Celestia flinched as though she had been physically struck. The tears in her eyes had continued to pool, and now they were already beginning to start flowing down her cheeks. Princess Celestia, Twilight reached out towards her with a hoof. Are you okay? Is something wrong? When Celestia spoke, her voice had begun to waver. "Oh, Twilight, you just don't understand what it is that I've done. It's not just that I kept your true nature as a planeswalker a secret. When I made you a princess, I had an ulterior motive." "What?" Twilight's brain skipped over itself as if it were a broken record, in its attempt to process the statement it had just heard. "An ulterior motive? I don't understand, Princess. What are you talking about?" "I had told myself that you had earned your station through your own accomplishments," Celestia tearfully replied. "And looking at all that you've become on your own, I can see that there was truth to that statement. But there was another reason that I couldn't find the courage to admit, even to myself. I was afraid." Afraid?" Twilight stammered. "Afraid of what?" "I was afraid of losing you," said Celestia, barely keeping herself from sobbing. "I was afraid that once you learned of your true abilities, you would leave this world behind." "Princess Celestia, that's ridiculous. I'd never leave, and what would happen if you were to find yourself in danger?" Celestia interrupted. "What would happen if your life was threatened on another plane, and there was no way that any pony could reach you? What would I do then?" The question had given Twilight pause. Her ears folded against her head as she answered. I don't know." "Then you understand why I wanted to keep you from planeswalking," said Celestia. "I gave you a duty to Equestria and to all of its ponies to ensure that you would not have the opportunity to leave. Despite what I had tried to convince myself, I was not certain that you were ready for such a responsibility. You have proven yourself more than worthy since, but the truth is, I had still deceived you. I had manipulated you because I was too cowardly to tell you the truth." "Princess Celestia, Twilight turned her gaze away from Celestia, avoiding direct eye contact. A maelstrom of conflicting emotions had stirred within her, leaving a heavy, twisted feeling within her chest. "I have to go. I need time to think about this." Her horn glowed, and she recited recited the teleportation spell in her thoughts. In the sudden haze that had clouded her mind, she did not even bother trying to scan the area of her destination. The last thing she heard before vanishing was Celestia desperately calling her name. Twilight had suddenly found herself in her bedroom. It was a reckless move to teleport away without taking the necessary precaution, but she had grown so intimately familiar with her castle that her mental map was more than accurate enough to complete the spell. Her head spun around as she considered the conversation she had just left. Becoming the Princess of Friendship was far and away the most important event of her life, but the knowledge that Princess Celestia had ulterior motives had rendered the memory distinctly bittersweet. She understood Celestia's reasoning. She was afraid of losing her pupil, a feeling that Twilight knew all too well. Yet, as easily as she could forgive Celestia for not telling her about the spark, the knowledge that Celestia did not initially believe in her as much as she had let on had stung. Twilight had trusted Princess Celestia more than any pony else in her life, but now doubt had begun to eat away at that trust. It almost made her feel sick to her stomach. As she tried to sort out her own emotions, her thoughts turned again to the planar amulet and to her own capabilities, and ideas slowly beginning to take shape within her. It sounded almost crazy when she repeated it back in her mind, but it was the only thing she had to make sense of her situation. She had to prove Celestia wrong. She had to prove that there was no reason to worry if she traveled to other planes. She had to prove that she could take care of herself in other worlds just as easily as in this one. Twilight had no idea how to planeswalk, and yet that didn't stop her from trying. She focused her magic in the same way that she did when wearing the planar amulet, yet this time her desire was different. She did not merely wish to test her ability to travel between planes, but to exist within another plane altogether. A light surrounded Twilight's vision, first engulfing her, then everything else. She felt herself being ripped away from her entire universe. When Twilight's senses returned, she had found herself in an environment vastly different from the secure confines of her bedroom. It wasn't the space between planes, the blind eternities, as Celestia had called it, as she couldn't feel the constant tingling beneath her skin. She raised a hoof to her eyes and wiped the last of the blurriness from her own vision. What she saw was the most grotesque and horrifying sight she had ever seen. She stood within the central area of a tattered, worn-down circus tent, with a massive crowd surrounding her on three sides. Many of them looked like the humans from the world beyond the magic mirror, but their skin tones were far less colorful and varied, and many of them didn't even look human at all. Some of them had pointed ears like no human she had ever seen. Others were short and greenish with sharp teeth and hooked noses, and still others were completely translucent, as if they were entirely immaterial. But more horrifying were the things she was in the circus with. In one corner she could see a lion tamer with a chair and a whip. The clothes he wore were made entirely from tanned animal hide, and he was covered in scars that appeared to be entirely self-inflicted. The lion he was taming was a disgusting creature she was certain didn't exist naturally, a haphazard amalgamation of a lion, centipede, and frog. In another corner was an even more disgusting abomination balancing itself atop an inflatable beach ball. Like the frog, centipede, lion, it was an amalgam of various animals, where the creature before the lion tamer was clearly alive, This one was the work of what Twilight could only assume was a necromancer, a hideous misshapen animal skeleton constructed from the bones of who knows how many different animals and reanimated with what must have been some sort of evil magic. In the third corner was a decaying human corpse, dressed as a clown, juggling a series of flaming batons, along with what were apparently its own severed legs. Finally, in the corner furthest from herself and the audience, was someone dressed as a ringmaster. Twilight wasn't sure what it was, but it was most definitely not human. The closest thing she saw was the form Sunset Shimmer had taken when she donned the element of magic. Sharp yellow teeth, vicious claws, leathery red skin, reptilian eyes, and bat-like wings. But even Sunset's monstrous form could not compare to the sheer viciousness the creature seemed to project from itself just by existing. The crowd jeered and booed at Twilight relentlessly, and all around her was the stench of death. The ringmaster gestured at her with his baton and hissed at her in a language she didn't understand, but the murderous intent was absolutely clear in his beady, sunken eyes. She had to get out of there. She had to get out of there right away. Twilight lifted off the ground at a speed that would make even Rainbow Dash envious, tearing a hole through the tent as she flew away and leaving the circus behind, never to look back. She didn't care where she was flying, only what she was flying from. Alright, just a warning, we're gonna perspective shift for like a few paragraphs here. For nearly his entire life on Ravnica, experimenting had been the one thing that made it worth living. He'd spent so many years building up his reputation as an innovator, only to have it all snatched away in a single afternoon. His guildmaster was intensely displeased with the failure of Project Lightning Bug, and had made sure afterwards to demote him to the most tedious research imaginable. It was all endless drudgery, mostly replicating the results of other researchers with no chance to realize his true potential. He supposed it was his fault for intentionally sabotaging the project, but it was a necessary sacrifice to conceal his secret. The Firemind was nothing if not avaricious in his desire for information. Gosh, I can't do this today. And there was no telling how he would react to the knowledge of Planeswalkers, much less that the living guild Peck himself was one. And that was to say nothing of how the other guilds would respond if they knew their sole meditator was absent from the plane for extended periods of time. When the workday had finally ended, the guild mage quietly excused himself from the halls of his research station, into the busy streets that defined his home plane. There were several bars that he frequented within the district, and he had already decided which one he would visit that evening. He had made it halfway to his destination, though, through the bustling crowds, when his attention was forcefully drawn skyward. As strange things happened in Ravnica with some regularity, most others paid no mind to it, but his eyes were far too keen to let it escape his notice. It was a small equine that superficially resembled a Pegasus, but with a large horn atop its head, similar to the creatures known as unicorns on other planes. Its features were diminutive, with a shortened muzzle and large front-facing eyes, uncharacteristic of a typical herbivorous species. Most notably of all, its entire coat and mane consisted of unusually vibrant shades of purple. Most others would likely write it off as another one of the Simics mutant experiments, but he had realized the truth himself almost instantly. This creature was not native to the plane of Ravnica. Ralzarek clasped his forehead with his fingertips and let out a deep sigh. It was going to be one of those days. Alright, ponies, so that was the second chapter of My Little Planeswalker, Twilight Spark. I think it was called Painful Truths. I didn't look when I started. Chapter 2, Painful Truths. I should have said the chapter number. I'm stupid. Thank you. Anyway, so I said I was going to have a surprise at the end of this video, and I do. So for those of you who play Magic, please, if you play Magic, comment under this video. I would love to play you in Magic Arena because it would be fun. But that's not the point. Sorry. I love Magic so much. The point is, at the end of each chapter, the author, Zennistrad, created a custom Magic card, but he only put the details on it. So I decided to create the card. So I'm going to throw that up on the screen right now. There you go. You should see it, unless I just forgot to edit this. But I'm not going to because I'm going to edit this in like 10 minutes. I'm going to make sure that I edit this tonight and get it out tonight. Zennistrad, if you see this, I really hope you like it, and I am going to continue to make the cards. I already have the entire first story done, and I'm working through the sideboard stories right now, but it'll be fun. I love these cards. They look so good. Also, Twilight's Ultimate is totally busted. That's cheating. And I know you got this comment a lot under your story, but it is, man. Actually, no. Just Tamio the Moon Sage. But anyway, that's just some Magic nerd stuff that just you bronies wouldn't know. If you're a brony who doesn't play Magic, I would very much encourage you to take a look at it. Even if even if you don't want to spend a ton of money on physical cards, go to the App Store, download Magic Arena. It is fully free to play. There are in-app purchases, but you can go do that. Not sponsored, I swear. I just really, really, really like Magic. And like I said, that offer is still on the table. If anyone wants to play in Magic Arena, just comment on your username under the video, and I will play you, and I will beat you. I know, that was super cocky, but, I don't know. I just dealt someone 47 damage in one turn with a burn spell deck, so, you know. Anyway, if you know, you know. Anyway, stream on Saturday. Make sure to be there, because I will not be forgiving if you don't. And, I'm gonna have Stormheart Blaze on there with me. I'm super excited to bring her onto the channel for you guys. But, yeah, we're gonna play Smash Bros, which, okay, funny story. My Switch almost broke today. I don't know what happened, but Smash Bros just was not loading, and I was like, crap, are we gonna have to go with the second option? But no, I fixed it. It's loading now. We're good. Anyway, I'm gonna go play Smash Bros for a while, and then I'm gonna edit this video, so, make sure to like and subscribe. We are working our way towards Banquo. Yeah, we're gonna beat up Banquo. Well, not literally. I hate to say this, but I have too much respect for Banquo to do so. Did you guys see his plushie collection? Go watch either his video or my video on it, because it is so adorable. I love his plushies, but, I mean, no, I hate his plushies. I can't say things like this. No, you can't hate plushies. No, I like the plushies. I can't even be mad. I love the plushies. They're awesome. Anyway, like and subscribe. I will see you guys next time. Thank you for listening. Chapter 3 coming soon. Yay.